Support comes from Sunday Morning Cafe, presenting Resilience and Creativity, a concert and interview with Royce Martin, creator of Swag Time, and resilience researcher Dr. Tom Wagner on August 2nd, sundaymorningcafe.com.
From the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, this is The Gateway. It's Tuesday, July 14th. I'm Abby Larico. The federal government has released new rules controlling how farmers can use the controversial herbicide dicamba.
We have to have every tool in the toolbox. Weeds are not getting easier to kill.
How the chemical is helping and what else it's hurting, coming up after this news on The Gateway. St. Charles County leaders approved a 6-month ban on large-scale data center development last night. As St. Louis Public Radio's Kayvon Mansouri reports, the county's temporary moratorium follows an outright ban on any data center developments in the city of St. Charles.
Applause rang out in the county council chambers as members unanimously approved the moratorium. The bill aims to give the county time to study the impacts of large-scale data centers in the area and evaluate if they are right for the county. It bans any new data centers larger than 100,000 square feet in the county or the expansion of existing data centers. District 2 Councilman Joe Brazil called for a longer ban on the controversial developments.
I don't know why we're not doing a permanent one to revisit, or at least do a 1 or 2 year, make it 1 or 2 years. 6 months is nothing.
The council also approved a change to its senior tax freeze, removing a requirement for its seniors to renew their status with the county annually. I'm Kayvon Mansouri, St. Louis Public Radio.
St. Louis Board of Aldermen President Megan Green has been awarded a $35,000 settlement in the case she filed against police 8 years ago after being tear-gassed at a protest. St. Louis Public Radio's Lucretia Wembley has details.
Green was among hundreds of protesters who took to the streets after former police officer Jason Stockley was found not guilty in the shooting death of Anthony Lamar Smith. She says the police didn't warn the crowd before she and others were tear-gassed, a move that she says violated a federal consent decree. Green says police have a responsibility to minimize harm during those events.
And I have a lot of concern about the approach that our police department takes toward protesters and people exercising their First Amendment rights, only getting worse under state control.
Green says the settlement money will be sent to Invest STL, a nonprofit dedicated to building equitable neighborhoods. I'm Lucretia Wembley, St. Louis Public Radio.
The Missouri Attorney General's office says although it's settled, it believes officers acted lawfully during protests. A plan to spend $250 million in Rams settlement funds can now get officially underway in St. Louis. Mayor Kara Spencer signed legislation yesterday directing the money to tornado recovery, North St. Louis and downtown redevelopment, and public works, including the Water Division. Spencer says the city plans to immediately spend $2.5 million on hazardous tree removal and repairs to sidewalks that will not be covered by FEMA. The Water Division will also immediately receive its $40 million to start critical repairs. Missouri Governor Mike Kehoe signed 44 bills into law yesterday, including a nearly 200-page health care bill. As STLPR's Sarah Kellogg reports, it contains several policies related to reproductive health.
The legislation allows for Missourians on private insurance to obtain 12 months' worth of birth control pills at once. It also expands Medicaid coverage to doula services. Medicaid would cover more before, during, and after a pregnancy. The state health department must also operate a registry of available doula services. Additionally, the bill requires insurance companies to cover blood pressure monitors for pregnant and postpartum mothers. The bill also requires Missouri to track and report cases of Lyme disease and alpha-gal syndrome, a tick-borne disease that creates an allergy to mammalian products like meat. Any identifiable information on the blood test could only be shared between a patient and their physician. I'm Sarah Kellogg, St. Louis Public Radio.
The governor also signed a bill yesterday that provides rights to, quote, a child born alive during or after an abortion or attempted abortion. The legislation is called the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act. Anyone who would kill or attempt to kill a fetus born alive after an abortion attempt could be prosecuted for first-degree murder under the bill. Those against the bill say the focus on abortion causes consequences regarding maternal care in Missouri. The point when a fetus would be able to survive outside the womb is generally around 24 weeks of pregnancy. According to KFF Health Research, abortions at or after 21 weeks of pregnancy are uncommon and represent 1% of all abortions in the country. People in southeast Missouri are seeking help and working to rebuild after floods devastated parts of their community late last week, leaving one person dead. STLPR's Chad Davis reports.
The Black River hit record crests following intense flooding, reaching more than 28 feet in Annapolis. The floods hit Iron, Crawford, and Reynolds counties hard. Buildings, homes, and cars were destroyed. River's Edge Campground in Lesterville lost power, and some had to seek higher ground on roofs to get rescued. Becky Stoll is director of operations for the campground. She says everyone was evacuated last week, but RVs, cars, and buildings have been destroyed. Stoll says there's a lot that residents need now.
These kids have lost all their toys, reading glasses to be able to read all the documents that are coming in for people, just things like that.
The Lesterville School District has put a temporary pause on donations, but will ask for specific outstanding needs as they arise. I'm Chad Davis, St. Louis Public Radio.
A steel worker died over the weekend at the Granite City Mill from electrocution. The Belleville News-Democrat reports the employee is a 62-year-old from Bridgeton. He and two other employees were repairing an electrical transformer that malfunctioned during a storm early Saturday morning. The Madison County Coroner's Office says he died while trying to shut it off. Granite City Works corporate owner U.S. Steel says the death occurred on the mill's finish line and no one else was injured. In a statement, a U.S. Steel spokesman says safety is the company's top priority and it will cooperate fully with all investigations. Looking toward the August primaries now. One of three Democrats looking to succeed Sam Page as St. Louis County executive says his time in Jefferson City puts him in the best place to heal divides in the county. STLPR's Rachel Littman has more from State Senator Brian Williams.
Williams' 8 years in the legislature were arguably productive. He was able to pass a number of bills related to criminal justice and police reform and direct money to St. Louis County, all as a member of the superminority. Williams says he was successful because he learned to work with people he didn't always like, and he says that will be important to rebuild the relationships between the executive and legislative branches in the county.
I think we have a unique opportunity with my experience of getting things done in Jefferson City to get the entire council rowing together in what I believe is an apolitical, nonpartisan government.
Williams was a guest on the Politically Speaking podcast. Episodes with his Democratic opponents will be published later this week. I'm Rachel Littman, St. Louis Public Radio.
The Cardinals may not have had a game yesterday due to the league's all-star break, but it was still a banner night for the team, thanks to Jordan Walker's home run derby win, the first in franchise history. The Environmental Protection Agency released new rules regulating the controversial herbicide dicamba earlier this year. While it can be an effective tool for farmers to control weeds, it can also drift in the wind and kill other plants. As St. Louis Public Radio's Will Bauer reports, experts don't expect the new rules to solve all of the underlying issues with dicamba.
On Kevin Johnson's farm in eastern Illinois near the Indiana border, weeds can be a really big issue. He and his family grow corn and soybeans, and they care a lot about the soil. Instead of tilling the field to kill weeds, Johnson relies on a mixture of herbicides, including dicamba.
We have to have every tool in the toolbox. Weeds are not getting easier to kill.
Dicamba is a potent weed killer, but the problem with this herbicide is that some crops are extremely sensitive to it. Grapes, tomatoes, and some trees can all be killed. Even soybeans and cotton that have not been genetically modified are at risk. Dicamba can drift in the wind, and after it's been sprayed above a certain temperature, it can vaporize and travel for miles. Aaron Hager is a weed science professor at the University of Illinois.
It's never really a question about if we'll see the symptomology of off-target movement. We just don't know how extensive it'll be because we can't really predict what the temperature is going to be.
And that's why Hager says dicamba can be such a contentious topic, even among farmers.
The dicamba mindset among end users or non-end users was like the 2016 presidential election. You were in one camp or the other, and if you weren't in my camp, you were wrong.
The EPA calls the new regulations for spraying dicamba on cotton and soybeans the strongest ever. Hager says in some ways they are stricter. For example, they don't allow dicamba to be sprayed if it's hotter than 95 degrees. But the EPA also dropped rules that prevented it from being applied after June. Purdue University weed scientist Tommy Butts says farmers need to control weeds, but he has mixed feelings about dicamba.
We have to do certain strategies to reduce drift, which are really important, but then that's also shooting our weed control in the foot, and so we're losing here too. So that's why I say I always have a love-hate relationship with it right now, because we're stuck in the middle with a lot of balancing acts, and there's no good answer across the board.
Even outside the agricultural community, dicamba can be a problem. In some rural towns, the signs of dicamba drift are apparent if you know where to look.
Once you see it, you can't unsee it.
In a public park in Tilden, Illinois, Kim Pitcher has noticed the leaves on the bur oak trees are curled and cupped around the edges.
They're also just misshapen. You can see that even some of the tips are folded and some of them are severely stunted.
Pitcher is the director of ecological health for Prairie Rivers Network, a conservation nonprofit. She's been documenting drift damage across Illinois for 9 years now. She says dicamba stresses trees and even kills others. Previous iterations of the EPA rules, called labels, have been shot down in federal court, and Pitcher doesn't expect these new rules to break the cycle.
Over and over, the courts have dealt with this issue, and we've had extremely technical, long labels to follow, and it's still causing injury, and it's really frustrating to see it come back.
Back on the farm in eastern Illinois, Johnson says he's sympathetic to those with concerns about dicamba. He and his neighbors plant dicamba-resistant soybeans in adjacent fields to avoid drift problems. To him, the key comes down to communication.
And I think we're getting better to that, but up until that point, I don't think everybody was having a conversation. We wave at each other, stuff like that, as neighbors, but you got to have those conversations now. Nobody loves those conversations, but you got to have those conversations.
Johnson says he wishes there was a better chemical to use, but for now, they have to work with what they have. In Vermilion County, Illinois, I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
The Gateway is a production of St. Louis Public Radio, a listener-supported service of the University of Missouri-St. Louis. Music by Ryan McNeely of Adult Fur. I'm Abby Larico, and from the St. Louis Public Radio Newsroom, thanks for listening to The Gateway.